Welcome everyone warmly to the webinar dedicated to the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program. Greetings to all who have been part of the program with us for many years. I also extend a warm welcome to those who would like to learn more about the program. Hence, this webinar is definitely for them. We will cover some familiar topics and introduce some new ones. Express, most importantly, we will present our latest solution, Express Deployment Environment, which will greatly simplify life and work. The chat will be disabled during the webinar because sometimes it can be distracting and occasionally silly things come up. Therefore, please direct any questions via email. The address is t.laskowski@netland.pl as provided in the footer. So, any questions or concerns, please address them directly to me or to the team at mar.netland.pl, who handle all our partners. A few words about Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher. The program was created in 2009, maybe a little earlier. I joined it in 2009. Previously, it was still secondary pilot, a program that also enabled the purchase of licenses for refurbished computers. Why was this program created in the first place? Well, there were often doubts about the legality of licenses and the software installed on computers. Could it be used legally or not? Was the license appropriate or missing altogether? Sometimes computers didn't have licenses at all. That's why a program was created specifically for refurbished and used devices. It's not intended for new devices, but it allows for the purchase of licenses at a very attractive price to be included with the computers. These licenses cannot be sold separately. The aim is to ensure genuine licenses. The aim is to provide the original licenses. It's a partner program, meaning authorized partners cooperate. Previously, there was also a program for registered refurbishers, Microsoft Registered Refurbisher. Unfortunately, the program was terminated due to low interest about 7 or 8 years ago. The licenses available in the program MR, I'll use this abbreviation because the full name is a bit long, and supposedly in the United States, all three-letter abbreviations are already reserved. Microsoft managed to get it. These are commercial licenses for Windows 10 and Windows 11 Home and Pro, as well as an additional program for such licenses as cheap, charitable, nonprofit, etc., called Citizenship. These are licenses for Windows 10 and 11, but only in the Pro version and Office 2019 Home and Student Citizenship. These licenses can only be used for specific user groups such as schools, kindergartens, educational institutions, libraries, public organizations, nonprofit charities. Very cheap licenses, around 20 PLN for Windows 10 and 11 and 11 PLN for Office. However, for the remaining licenses for Windows 10 and 11 and Office, these are roughly the prices of these licenses. However, they cannot be sold to commercial users here. And all remaining licenses for Windows 10 Home and Pro in commercial versions, including home versions, can also be used in businesses. There are no restrictions here. The cooperation model, because if we talk about the MAR program, we need to start with how cooperation looks. Partners who join the program through MARS do not cooperate directly with Microsoft, but through partners, through Netland, through authorized partners. An authorized partner has a contract with Microsoft and then receives all the tools and keys, as well as technical support directly from Microsoft. And partners who sign agreements with Netland, directly with Netland, also gain access to tools, electronic keys, and technical support provided directly by Netland. Here we are quite a unique partner because we offer much more than Microsoft does. Specifically, we offer our own pre-installation systems, which we will show later, individual solutions, and full technical support. Anyone who has used technical support from big giants, whether Microsoft or others, knows that it's not always easy. That's why we focus on the quality of technical support, on direct contacts with partners, on recognizing needs, and on a more, how should I say it, string attached, I would say in English, very close cooperation. And the point is that we precisely identify the partner's needs. The cooperation model concerning the technical layer looks like this. An authorized partner, which is Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher, such as Netland, receives keys, orders, and issues invoices. They also receive invoices from Microsoft, and these keys are delivered to the partner's accounts. I haven't mentioned one important thing yet. Licenses for operating systems are available only in electronic form, so special tools for installation are required. Software is also required, which we also provide. Here's an illustrative diagram of how this procedure looks. It's not about sending keys via email or through any other channels. These are Microsoft's cloud tools that connect to the cloud, retrieve keys, and also provide installation tools. And more importantly, each installation must be reported, so there is no possibility that we simply enter the product key and it's done. Each installation goes to Microsoft. Each device is linked through a hardware identifier to a specific license. This is generally a procedure taken somewhat from the production of new computers. The OA 3.0 procedure, although not entirely and not everything is done this way. Ultimately, the end user receives a computer with a pre-installed operating system, a product key in the operating system, not in the BIOS, not in the firmware, but exceptionally in the MAR program. The license keys are installed in the system registry. Upon first boot, the program activates and the user can start working. Now, the whole problem lies in how we do this, how we conduct these installations, whether everything is in order with the license, which I will explain in the next part. The benefits of participating in the MAR program are quite significant for companies and considers the obvious prestige, the obvious fact that we participate in a program directly endorsed by Microsoft. We provide customers with legal software, so there are no doubts here that the software is legal, that we have the proper license. We also conduct installations in a controlled manner. Here we place a strong emphasis on properly training our partners, providing good technical support, and using proper software installation methods. This is because, as you know, software can be installed in various ways, and then the customer often faces problems. What the MAR program also provides is an extended product life cycle. We don't throw computers into the trash because, firstly, it's illegal, and secondly, it's harmful to the environment and doesn't look good at all. Many devices are still suitable for further use after 4 or 5 years, and the only problem is their refurbishment, minor repairs, and licensing, which I will talk about in a moment. Customers will definitely consider such a company as a trusted supplier. We also ensure the safety of customers because the software receives updates. If we use installation images from a trusted source, then the customer will receive updates without any problems. If we use some strange installers from various sources, it may be different, exposing the customer to certain risks. Of course, we avoid problems related to illegal software, which is not only a violation of intellectual property rights, but can also lead to criminal charges. So here, I warn against treating licenses somewhat recklessly because Microsoft has recently taken several actions. The tools you receive as part of the cooperation with Netland are very unique, so I'll talk about them in a moment, as well as advertising materials, technical training. And what we always emphasize in cooperation with partners is that you can be sure that the problem will be solved. We don't postpone problems. Our partners' problems are our problems, and we simply solve them. It's worth adding to every delivered computer. Here's a slide showing what we provide, namely a certificate of authenticity with the product key, license number, system version, and computer serial number. It's important to take care of such details, such nuances, because the client will see it differently. They will see that there's something to it. They don't get this from others, but they receive it here. Legal software endorsed by an authorized partner. The second label is a logistic label, an example of what our express deployment environment system can generate. If we talk about the MAR program, we must mention what legal software actually is. There are a lot of misunderstandings here, which, as I will show later, have led to a very shocking thesis, but we'll leave that surprise for a moment. So, original software is software that has been controlled by the manufacturer, i.e., by the owner of the software, the copyright holder, and is used in accordance with the granted license. What does it mean to have a license? A license should be treated as a right to use, not a right of ownership. This is a fundamental distinction that needs to be made, because if we treat it as a right of ownership, i.e., we basically have an unlimited right to dispose of a particular thing. In the case of software, this is not the case. Even copying software and using it on 2 computers is a violation of property rights, a violation of intellectual property, and we do not have the right to do so. The license is also granted to the user and the device in the case of Windows systems, and throughout the webinar, I will mainly refer to licensing issues related only to Windows systems for refurbished computers, because licensing issues are very complicated. The license is also granted per user and per device for the Windows system, and here throughout the webinar, I will mainly refer to licensing issues concerning only the Windows system for refurbished computers, because licensing matters are very complex. Each software has different licenses, different provisions, and here I wouldn't want to introduce too much chaos. However, devices sold on the market usually come with operating systems. After a few years, they end up in companies dealing with used computers, and here certain problems begin. Uh, so the licenses can be acquired in several ways for new devices. There's the OEM channel, which includes major manufacturers DOEM, Detail OEM, which are partners of LDP, and many others who also install on smaller batches of computers. There's customer OEM, which can be purchased at retail stores. There's full package product, which is the boxed version. There's GetGen Ruin Kit, which is a legalization tool. And in the MAR channel, a license is available for refurbished computers. I haven't mentioned here licenses from the Windows Store, which can also be purchased for both new and used computers. However, as you can see, there is no mention here of licenses sent by key or any stores selling used software, etc. No, that is not a legal way to acquire such licenses. It never was and never will be. And why is that? Do we need to refer to licenses? Well, software is licensed, not sold, and that's a direct provision. What I said earlier is not about ownership rights. It's about licensing, which grants the right to use the software, not ownership. What's very important with used computers is the way we acquire and transfer licenses. Here, no one has taken anything away because often companies use the argument of the Court of Justice of the European Union, which does not prohibit the sale of used software and so on. Yes, it does not prohibit it because Microsoft never had such provisions in their licensing agreements prohibiting it. The case concerned Oracle and a few others. So using this argument here is a bit off. Secondly, Microsoft directly in the licensing agreement has appropriate provisions allowing the transfer of software to another user. However, it must be done as an integral part, not as detached items. So it cannot be that we tear off the certificate, then sell it or sell the same product key several times without the certificate. These are not authorized actions and are not in accordance with the licensing agreement. It is clearly stated here that this transfer must include the transfer of all components. So if we deliver the computer to another user, at that moment we transfer to him the device itself, the product key, which is in the firmware or on a sticker, all elements such as labels, holographics, which are to confirm legality. But above all, we also transfer the software. If we do not transfer the software, then such transfer of rights resulting from the license is invalid, meaning the user does not have the right to download the software from some website because they do not have the authorization from the beginning, and a new license is required when there has not been a proper transfer to the next user. And another thing, which many may not remember or may not want to know, is that if we transfer to another user, we typically know the previous user, right? Because if not, then at this point, the matter is quite complicated because it seems that if we had a product key, but we're not sure what it fits. In normal life, we don't usually walk around with a key we found on the street and try to open doors with it. Similarly, if we find a car key in the parking lot, we probably won't go around the parking lot trying to find which one it opens. And if it opens, then what? Will we drive off or not? That's already a crime. It's the same with software. Even if we have a product key stored in firmware, if there hasn't been a proper transfer of that license, at that moment, we do not have the right to use it. The situation is also similar to bus tickets. Or maybe not just bus tickets. Let's see how it used to be, maybe sometime. But the scenes that still amuse today, the Razors, the 1960s. Do you have a ticket, sir? No. And you, sir? Neither do I. Then we're going, of course. Well, when it comes to activation, we often rely on the fact that the system got activated, everything seems fine, it displayed, the system was activated using a digital license, etc. No, a successful activation doesn't confirm that the software is genuine or covered by the correct license. The method of acquiring the software must confirm it. The way we obtained the right to use the software, i.e., the license, is what matters. The website how to tell Microsoft is very helpful, where you can find a lot of things. And here's an excerpt from Microsoft's official brochure regarding software for used computers. These are not my inventions, nor is it my philosophy. Part of this presentation regarding licensing was coordinated with Sania Taimatajevic, who is the Regional Director of Intellectual Property Protection at Microsoft, also known as the Anti-Piracy Department. So here is the official interpretation from Microsoft, meaning if the software has been properly transferred, then we have the right to use it. If it hasn't been properly transferred, then we must acquire a new license. and there are no exceptions regarding this matter. So even if we have a key in the BIOS, if everything activates for us, we have some certificate, and for example, we don't know the previous owner because the seller is usually not the previous user. Usually isn't and almost never is. And therefore, the situation in which we purchase a computer with such software is, to put it mildly, uncomfortable. Selling unlicensed copies of software not only violates the intellectual property rights of Microsoft or another manufacturer, but is also a crime, and this should be remembered. The How to Tell Microsoft website, whose address is at the bottom of this slide, is very helpful in determining whether a particular device has a valid license or not. I encourage you to use this website. You can learn many interesting things from it. Even starting from the stage when we download the media creation tool, there is a clear provision. First and foremost, you must have a license to install Windows 11 or a device with Windows 10 that qualifies for the upgrade, etc. So even just downloading the media creation tool, which is a tool for creating installation media, already requires a valid license. If we take a computer for which we have not received a license, it has not been transferred to us in any way, and we download a tool that tries to use a key that is stored somewhere or may not exist at all, and then it turns out that the system does not activate, then at that moment we are acting similarly to those who walk around with keys in the parking lot or in houses. All right, that would be all regarding the licensing. Now, I'll address another issue, how to correctly install the operating system, because this matter is not as straightforward as it may seem. If we use the Amelia Creation tool, we make a series of mistakes that can cost the end user either a lot of nerves or quite unpleasant consequences. Firstly, we must have a valid license for the software and elements confirming its legality. For used computers, this is the GMRL, Genuine Microsoft Refurbisher label. It's a holographic label that should be attached to every computer with a license for used computers. Proper completion of the out-of-box experience phase. Here, there are quite a few abuses when it comes to, perhaps we should first explain what OOB is all about. For those of you who are encountering this term for the first time, it refers to the entire device setup process by the end user. In short, it looks like this. The computer starts up, we choose the language, select the appropriate region where we work, set up the username, and then either agree or disagree with telemetry or other system settings. And it's mandatory to provide the user with such a task. Also, we accept the licensing agreement. The end user should accept the licensing agreement, should complete the full system customization, and the OOB phase, out-of-box experience, is designed to engage the end user in the system configuration process. There are no overly complicated tasks there that cannot be performed, and we must conduct the installation in such a way as to allow the end user to agree or disagree to certain things. After all, we cannot agree on behalf of the user to personalize advertisements or telemetry, etc., because it's even illegal. Just like mailing, we must first obtain the consent of the client to whom we send the mailing to simply send such messages with advertisements. Only in this way does the OB phase, which the end user goes through, provide them with a sense of security, because that's what it's about. And it also builds trust in the computer manufacturer who provided this tool. Installing all device drivers and necessary software may seem like an obvious thing to do. However, there are also many abuses here, because some say Windows will handle everything on its own. It will download everything. I'll just install the system and it will take care of everything. In a moment, I'll show you what such taking care of everything looks like. At this moment, we're losing the client's trust. We're losing what we call in English the user experience. We want the end user to be satisfied with such an installation. We want their experience to be good right from the start, rather than, for example, having updates running for several hours, drivers being downloaded. Here's an example. Windows Update. What it looks like after installing with the Media Creation tool. Please remember that the tool created by the Media Creation tool are not errors. These are computer restarts it performs. The system installed with the Media Creation tool in the latest version. The first thing it does, after being started by the end user, is to download updates. It downloads a lot of them. It's simply over an hour or two of work. The processor is fully loaded at this point. Memory is loaded. The computer is constantly doing something. And the user wonders why the computer is running so slowly. These things happen in the background, and not every user may know what's happening with their computer. That's why it's extremely important to provide not only with installed drivers, but also with updates, which I'll talk about in a moment. because the image we see here seems up to date, but it came out several months ago, and at this moment the restarts are what the user sees. For comparison, this is what the Windows Update transition looks like after XDE. After installation through our pre-installation system, only the system is immediately available. It takes 2 to 3 minutes to 4 minutes to download security updates because these patches are released very often. That's why we don't install them, but all cumulative updates for the operating system are already included in the installation images we install on computers. Current patches and updates is available at the time of system installation, which is what I just talked about, what I showed. Here the computer will be busy for just a few minutes. The user won't even notice it. No restarts, no freezes, no excessive load. Here the processor is loaded about 20%, 30, not much more. Another thing, tools for system recovery after a crash. Here it's a matter of taking care of the end user. Various things can happen with the operating system. However, what we definitely don't want to do is leave them on their own. On their own, meaning the system crashes. And then what? Download yourself, dear customer, a tool from the mediation tool, create it, install the system, etc. Or perhaps approach the topic differently. Please click on Recovery in the control panel. The computer will automatically restore itself to the state you received it in. A better solution, definitely. However, building such a solution requires some automation, which I'll also show in a moment. A virus-free and malware-free system, it would seem like a natural thing. However, if we install from a pen drive that goes between computers, at that moment we cannot provide the customer with complete certainty that the computer is free from defects, free from viruses, free from malware. Such properties can only be provided by an isolated installation environment that uses authorized sources of images directly from Microsoft. The full functionality of the system is also ensured by images from a legal source. Such a source is Microsoft, and through Microsoft we are also a provider of these installation images. Information about the manufacturer or company refurbishing the equipment is a requirement when it comes to licenses for refurbished computers, so that such information is provided. Because here I might surprise some, but it's not Microsoft that grants software licenses. It's granted by a partner who installs it. So either the company or Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher or MARM company or a third-party refurbisher partner who has signed an agreement with the MARM company. So it's a bit different. It's not Microsoft directly granting software licenses, but rather a partner who provides the software in OEM version. The only cases, 2 cases, in which Microsoft directly grants licenses are boxed versions in Windows Store or Microsoft Store. What I also encourage is automatic pre-installation of Office packages in versions 3.6.5 or 21 with perpetual licenses. Because the customer can familiarize themselves with this version, have a trial period for 7, 14, or up to 30 days, depending on the version, and then decide to purchase the computer. Such behavior will certainly increase the chance of selling the Office package. Personalization according to company settings and policy, meaning we can add a wallpaper, we can add additional applications, and so on, all of which increases the value of the computer. And other updates, I won't talk about this anymore. I'll also delve into the topic of Windows recovery, what it looks like. Here we also have a video of Windows recovery after our system. So here the user, in case of a crash, simply clicks on recovery in the Windows control panel, selects recovery. It takes a bit of time, but ultimately the computer is restored to the state in which it was received, including previously installed applications, drivers, and updates from Windows Update. The only thing it needs to fetch are the current security updates, such as Windows Defender signature definitions most often. The procedure is quite simple, quite transparent. The user can also choose to keep their files or completely erase them. The whole process is automatic. It takes a little bit of time, but in the end, they receive a computer that is still ready to work. It starts up in OOB mode, out-of-box experience. The user customizes it, and everything is as it should be. This waiting during recovery is a bit tedious indeed. Sometimes it might seem not worth it, but I assure you, installing drivers by some users is something that is quite troublesome. And translating it to everyone? No, it's just simpler here. It can be done more straightforwardly. Prepare the appropriate tools. The media creation tool is not a tool intended for installing operating systems in the conditions of a computer refurbishing company. It is a tool designed for end users who have purchased a new computer and need to reinstall the system. Please note that at the beginning of its operation, the installer checks the key stored in the firmware and installs software compatible with that key. This creates certain problems when reinstalling computers that have a license different from the one stored in the firmware. For example, if a customer purchases a computer with Windows 10 Pro from us, but the computer has Windows 10 Home stored, after reinstalling with the Media Creation tool, Windows 10 Home will be installed, which the customer did not purchase. They have legitimate complaints against us because the software is not in the version they purchased. It does not provide compliance with the requirements for a new MR license, so MR licenses should not be installed in this way because it does not ensure a proper transition to the OB phase. What's more, when installing from the Media Creation tool, we also do something like this. Seemingly nothing special, but we are accepting the license agreement, and do we have the right to accept it on behalf of the user? No. So here, this process, which is often done almost unconsciously, is simply a violation of the licensing terms again, and we cannot do it. Let me explain how it looks like when it comes to our software, because I'm about to move on to the next point of solving all these issues, because surprisingly, it's not all that simple. Since 2015, I've been developing these kinds of solutions. When Windows 10 entered production, Microsoft didn't have any solutions for refurbishers. Previously, there was the Refurbisher pre-installation kit, which supported systems up to Windows 8, I believe. However, later on, there were no solutions, so I built this solution. Our solution differs in that it doesn't rely on the general concept of deploying Microsoft systems, where we have a large batch of computers, each the same, and we rely on images. We took a different approach, namely that each computer can be completely different. Each computer can have a different configuration from a different manufacturer, and we tackled this problem, so the installation method is completely different. Here, it's done through the Windows pre-installation environment and our own software. Let me show you how it works. We will switch now to a computer that is prepared for reinstallation. We'll boot it up from the WDS server, which stands for Windows Deployment Services, which we also support. This software can be run from both a USB drive and from a Windows Server system. At this moment, we're using the OPX framework. It's a convenient feature when it comes to various devices. Practically, we can boot up any device, whether it's from a USB drive or from a USB Ethernet adapter, USB-C Ethernet adapter. So here we can practically approach any device. The solution is designed for highly heterogeneous environment. So at this moment, the system automatically gathers information about the device, adjusts driver packages and everything else accordingly, and ensures installation in a controlled, repeatable manner. So here, there's no need for any clicking. Please note that I've only initiated the PX boot. And essentially that's it. The intervention of technicians here is limited to an absolute minimum. Anything that can be done automatically is done so. Maybe we can switch it on here without the camera. Here's how the startup screen looks like. Perhaps it couldn't be simpler. We select the system edition, which is very cool. It immediately shows us how many electronic licenses we have available because the application is also connected to the license server. We can choose any language version from those available for download. On our FTP server, you can download 37 language versions. They are all prepared, all up to date with current updates. We update the installation images every month in release cycles. Mid-month, Microsoft releases patches, and we start generating installation images mid-month. We can install Packet Office with just one click. We decide whether to install the electronic license also with just one click. So the installation, if everything is set up, and that's it. Essentially, that's the entire technician intervention. Later, the computer starts in audit mode. In audit mode, we can check if all devices, all drivers are installed. This procedure may take a while, but it is fully compliant with Microsoft's production documentation. There's no room for improvisation here. The documentation, which counts several thousand pages, is primarily prepared for large companies. So it is very difficult to tackle this topic, to build such an environment, especially when we have a lot of different computers. Of course, installing from an image, whether with Acronis or some other imaging program, probably has the advantage in terms of speed. However, everything else is just disadvantages. We cannot update such images, we cannot personalize them, and practically we install what we have simply captured earlier. Our Express Deployment Environment software also supports installation from images, as in the top menu. Here I'm showing the simplest example, the simplest case, when we just install the system, the electronic license, and everything else. Now I'll switch to the second computer which I already have because the whole process would take a few more minutes plus booting up. This is already the computer that is in audit mode, and here we'll complete the installation, meaning what I previously showed, how the system should be reinstalled. So let's maybe go back to that slide though. So updates. Oh, here's another interesting thing that will come up. We have integrated support for electronic licenses. I'll show you the installer in the second phase, in the audit phase, how we approach this. Pre-installed additional software. Now. So, here we have right away, please note that Acrobat Reader Chrome has been installed, some LibreOffice. What we selected in the first phase. So at this moment, we already have what we chose here in the applications to install, automatically installed in audit mode, in unattended mode, so we don't need any technician intervention during application installation. We will now run the second part of our software in audit mode, as it consists of several elements. The first is the installer, which you saw earlier. The second is the audit mode, where we finish the installation and prepare the computer for the end user. Here we have a few options to choose from, namely whether we want to capture drivers on the server for this installation, whether we want to install a new electronic license, or print labels. Here on the right side in the window, we would see a list of missing drivers, but here we have everything clean. No drivers are missing. Everything is installed as it should be. This was also ensured by the software at the stage of image installation. Here I can switch for a moment as the first computer is still running. Here you can see the phase of how it installs drivers. So we don't enter the system, we don't click anything, it all happens automatically for the given model. We don't search in a huge database and install all the drivers we have, only for the selected model. Everything is stored on the central server. By the word server, I mean not only a Windows server in the appropriate version, but it can also be an ordinary PC, so our software doesn't have high hardware requirements. We can run it from an ordinary computer from the 5th or 6th generation, which is able to simply output something through the Ethernet port, such as the installation image, drivers, and so on. It must have at least 2 TB of memory on the HDD plus some 120 SSD, and at this moment such a system can be installed and prepared. And again, technician intervention is kept to an absolute minimum. We click Finish Installation and seal the system. At this moment, that's exactly what I meant. The system also ensures that the device firmware is updated, so here we provide a fully controlled process. If firmware for a given device is available, it is prepared for installation at this point. With just one click, we can update the firmware here, we can install it. I won't do it now because it would involve a few restarts, but we'll skip that. Finish and seal, and that's all that the service does in terms of system preparation. In a moment, labels will be printed for it. The product key has been installed. This is confirmation of that. The new license is installed. Everything according to the procedure. The license is not activated because we are in audit mode, and at this point we still have some maneuvering room, so we can roll back this installation. We can restore the key to its previous state. It's not activated at the moment. Compliance with formal and legal requirements means installing a clean license, installing in accordance with Microsoft's requirements, ensuring a proper transition to the out-of-box experience OB phase, where the end user will always be presented with the first screen that allows them to customize it to their needs. Full user satisfaction. If the computer and system are functioning properly and installed correctly, it can be expected that the user will also be satisfied. If, for example, they were given a system without drivers, without updates, which took an hour or longer to set up, that would be subpar. On the website www.marnetland.pl, you can find all the information regarding the pre-installation system. There are also videos about licensing. If I haven't convinced someone and there's a possibility through licensing information, there are also available videos and information slides on how to properly license operating systems on used devices. Information about citizenship licenses is also available, but you can also learn a lot about XDE here. I also invite you to visit www.marnetland.pl for information about the system and electronic licenses. It's a knowledge source for those who already cooperate with us. And for those who are considering cooperation, it's definitely a valuable resource to familiarize yourself with the program. New features and the changes in the MARM program here. Certain things have changed, namely with the introduction of the Windows 11 system and its technical requirements. There are certain minimum technical and hardware requirements for Windows 11 software. These requirements include a minimum processor, then it must be UEFI mode, and there must be a TPM 2.0 module. This is natural. However, as part of the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program, Microsoft will check whether each device meets these requirements, and if they don't, penalties may be imposed. I want to warn you, this is a novelty in this program, so here things start to happen a bit differently when it comes to tightening up this channel. It can no longer be the case that some supposedly keys fly away from the manufacturer and something happens here. Each license, in fact, this is another requirement that has been introduced, the obligation to regularly submit reports. So if we install a specific electronic license, we are obliged to report it, for example, on the same day or as soon as possible, but at least 4 hours before the operating system activation. Why? This is a debatable issue, why they came up with it this way. Certainly, in the case of shipments to end customers, this is not very important, but we know how sometimes it happens that the computer is needed immediately. The customer is already waiting, the customer wants to work already, and we only send the report at the end of the day. I don't know how it will look in the future. I don't know how it will look next year, because generally these obligations will be very strictly enforced next year. However, I will try to negotiate a slightly different approach for the Mars, because the nature of the work is completely different from that of the manufacturers on Microsoft's side. Microsoft treats Mars as manufacturers of large equipment, where computers can lie in the warehouse for several or even a dozen days or longer. No, it doesn't happen here. What is also important when installing an electronic license, devices are automatically deregistered from the Microsoft Windows Autopilot program. The program was created for administrators and for new devices, and it allows for automatic configuration download when the device is first started up. Many of you have probably encountered the situation where suddenly we enter the OBS mode, installed a clean system, and suddenly a window pops up, log in to the organization, the name of a company that we don't even recognize. And in fact, we don't have many options to bypass it. Of course, you can disconnect from the internet during the OOB phase, and at this point, this configuration will not be downloaded. However, it is difficult to expect every end customer to whom we will send the equipment to do this. But the solution is simple. In 2020, I reported this problem to Microsoft. Together with engineers, we worked on a solution. I presented them with several options. They chose one option, which involves sending a report, the computer build report, when installing an electronic license which contains the hardware identifier of the device. Based on this hardware identifier, the device, if it was previously used in the Windows Autopilot service, will be automatically deregistered from it. Simple, elegant solution. So in summary, every device that has an installed electronic license will be automatically deregistered, and we have no worries that the end customer will suddenly see something they wouldn't want to see. This is a novelty that comes into effect from December 15th. The prohibition of installation. It sounds ugly, but it's about all devices that meet the requirements of the Windows 11 system must have the Windows 11 system installed under the MARM program, but cannot have Windows 10 installed. Of course, this applies to the end customer. It applies to delivery. So if we simply install the system, we must install Windows 11, but the end user always has the right to downgrade by 2 versions for the Pro version. In the case of the home version, there is no such possibility. So here it is important to remember that upon the end user's request, we can do a downgrade, but Windows 11 must be installed and reported. This is also what I emphasize. If we install Windows 11, we must enable UEFI mode and secure boot, enable TPM 2.0, even if it exists in the BIOS. You must ensure that it is enabled and the processor of the appropriate generation. All of this will be sent in the report. If Microsoft detects any non-compliance, they send a non-compliance report, and that's when trouble begins. All these requirements are also described on the website www.mar.netland.pl, which I strongly encourage you to visit. Technical support. All of this may seem very complicated because both the installation processes, the configuration of tools, and the installation process of electronic licenses themselves may seem complex. However, what I can say is that partners who collaborate with us after training often find it even simpler. Sometimes it even goes faster. After implementation, we conduct tests. After the tests, I assist, provide support with as many installations as needed until I feel confident enough to perform them correctly, independently. At this point, there is always full technical support as well as support from our sales department when it comes to pricing, negotiations, and so on. There is absolutely no problem. If a larger batch of systems is suddenly needed, a larger form of cooperation or significant negotiations are required, We are here to help, even with automating such processes. It is also worth mentioning that for more complex installations, we also provide individual deployment. So if individual solutions are needed, such as custom labels, custom reporting, modified installation methods, or additional applications, it is also possible, and we have the knowledge and technical resources to do so. To those of you who have been collaborating with us for many years, thank you for attending today's webinar. To those of you who are here for the first time and wanted to learn more, I invite you to collaborate with us. We will answer all questions. You can contact the maranetland.pl team or directly with me. All contact information and additional materials used during today's webinar will be available under the podcast later today. Thank you for your attention, and I invite you to collaborate with us.